Eruvin Daf Zion. Today, one of the most emotional emails that I've ever read. It comes from an anonymous person who says that he started high school at age 14, a new school, and the Rebbe gave them a quiz on Daf Yud, and he prepared really well. And when he got there, he couldn't believe it. The quiz was on Daf Yud Aleph, and he got a big 0 on his test. The Rebbe, the following day, raised his test in front of everybody and said, "Look at the score, a big 0." He said, "This person must be," and I quote, "a retard." And that was the stigma that they called this Bacher, and he stopped learning Gemara from the age of 14 until this very day when he found our shir 8 months ago at the age of 40. And he writes, "Baruch Hashem, I did not go off the derech. I'm married to a wonderful wife and 5 amazing children. Only at the age of 37, due to my wife's coaxing, did I finally let go of my decade-long hatred and pure animosity towards this Rebbe." And he writes on and on. It's a 2-page email. If I would have told, he found the shir, Baruch Hashem across the shir, it was magically hooked from day one. If somebody would have told me last year that soon I would be learning Gemara daily, I never believed it, but Baruch Hashem, you make the daf so accessible, enjoyable. I can proudly say that I'm actually kivei itim at the age of 40 every single day. I'm super excited about our upcoming siyum. And then he sent me another email saying that from this tragic story, he actually got a best friend till this very day. He bought himself a best friend, the guy that came and calmed him down and everything. Today, Be'ezer Hashem, we're having a monumental historical siyum around the world, 6 continents, over 100 different locations. We're going to hear from Charlie Harari, Rabbi Socher Friend, Rabbi Y.W. Jacobson, Rav Gav, Rabbi Ben Shushan, and only 107 of our mishpacha, small snippets, small little videos, so it promises to be an amazing siyum. So Eruvin Daf Zion, we're trying to explain a steer in the Brisa that says on one hand that the halacha is like B'Hillel, on the other hand it says in the Brisa you could do like B'Shamai. 3 explanations. Either it's before the Baskal, the heavenly voice that came down and said the halacha is like B'Hillel, so therefore if you do like B'Shamai you're okay. Or even after the heavenly voice, the Baskal, it goes according to Rabbi Yeshua, says we don't listen to Baskal. Torah is in this world, Shemaim has no right to say who the halacha is like. Or the pshat is, we're just talking in general. If this is machlekes Tanoim and Amoraim, never grab all the kulas or all the chumras, but not speaking specifically about Bisham and Bisil. So what about the case that we had yesterday, a mavoi that's in the shape of a ches? And we had a machlokes, according to Rav, you have to do something about it. It's a mavoi mefulash. It's as if it's through and through from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, you have to put it through Pesach. On the other hand, Shmuel says you don't have to do anything. But if it would be a mefulash, Shmuel would hold, you have to put in a door. So therefore in Nahardah they put doors in. But wait a minute, you're jumping on 2 chasanas. You're saying that Allah is like Rav and like Shmuel. What do? Says the Gemara, in fact, it is like Rav, because Rav holds in that specific case, although halachically, technically speaking, you don't have to put a door in, but he used to tell everybody, put a door in. Just be machmer. So you did, in Nardah, they did exactly like Rav. According to Rav Ada, he never told people to put a door in. What's going on is an amazing thing. If there's a contradiction between the 2 shitas, then you can't do those 2 shitas. But if there's no contradiction, like in our case, you could do l'chumra like both shitas. What's the example? A spine. A spine of a human being in a room creates tumas oil, everything in the room is tummy. What if it's missing 1 vertebrae? Then according to Beisil, it's not a spine anymore. According to Beishamai, it is a spine. So in other words, Beishamai are makel in are machmir in a spine. And they say that the room remains tamei until you remove 2 vertebrae. If you take that same chumrah and bring it to food, to an animal, if an animal is missing 1 vertebrae, according to Beishamai, you're permitted to eat it. That's a tremendous kula. His chumrah turns into a kula. If you were to go ahead and use the kula of Beis Hill, for instance, by a vertebrae, and say that because it's missing 1 vertebrae, the room is not tamei, and use the kula of Beis Shammai and say, since it misses 1 vertebrae, you are permitted to eat it, that's using 2 kulas and you are a rasha. If you're using 2 chumras, you're going in the dark. What about Rabbi Kiva, who picked an esrog on the first day of Shvat in the 3rd year of Shemitah? The 2nd year of Shemitah you have to bring Meiser Sheni. The 3rd year of Shemitah you have to bring Meiser Ani. Rabbi Kiva did both. He brought Meiser Sheni, Meiser Ani. Why? Because he wasn't sure if Rosh Hashanah Li'ilana is for trees is on the 1st day of Shvat or on Tu B'Shvat. Is it Beis Hillel or Beishamai? So you see that he went like Beis Hillel and Beishamai, even though they contradict each other. Says the Gemara, that's only because Rabbi Kiva wasn't sure what Beis Hillel says. And he couldn't ask anybody, nobody told him. So therefore he's machmer on himself. Rav says that the machlokes of Tanakam and Chananya that we had yesterday, when you have a mavim and foolish, a wide open mavim that goes from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, according to Tanakam, all you need to do is Tzuras HaPesach on one end, and on the other end, Lechei Kaira. According to Chananya, well, it depends. Bishami say you need 2 doors, Beisil say you need 1 door. That old machlokes is only when there's a Rosh Hashanah on one side and a Rosh Hashanah on the other side. a street on both sides or a marketplace on both sides. But if one of the sides is not a street, it's as if it has two carmelises on both sides, two wide open areas, two bikkas. So if you have a bik on one side and a Rosh Hashanah on the other side, all you need is a tzuras HaPesach. Certainly, if you have two bikkas on both sides, all you need is a tzuras HaPesach. Now the Gemara gives us an amazing case, which is going to take us into tomorrow's sugi as well. You have a mavoi, and the mavoi was broken into, the back wall was broken into a rechava, which is a back lot. Nobody uses it. And that back lot was broken into Rosh Hashanah. So if you look at it on the picture, you see Rosh Hashanah on both ends. Theoretically, it should be a mavoi mafulish. It goes from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. Yet, Rav Yehuda says the halacha is, we don't consider it mafulish because the rechava, the back lot, stops it, makes a mechitza, you can't go. Another halacha says, is that you permit it to carry in the mavoi. If you don't say that the people, there's no eruv, the people from the back lot ruin it, no, you're allowed to carry in the mavoi. If you make a diuk, you'll say, well, why was the case in a rechava? Just say, if the mavoi is open into a chatzar, why did you pick a rechava? Because it was open into a chatzar, obviously, you cannot carry in the mavoi. So this doesn't go according to Rav, because Rav says mefurish. In this exact case, when the mavoi is open into a chatzar, and the chatzar is open into a Rosh Hashanah, he says that in the mavoi you cannot carry at all, but in the chatzar you're permitted to carry. So the Havamina was that the reason why you can't carry in the mavoi is because this is considered a mavoi mafulish. This mavoi leads us right into Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. And he also says that in the chatzar you could carry. It seemed like before we were saying in Rav Yehuda that only in a rechava you could carry from one to the other, but in a chatzar you can't. So the Gemara says, amazing. Perhaps it does go according to Rav as well. Where Rav says that you can't carry in the mavoi is because there is no eruv between the mavoi and the chatzar. Therefore you can't carry. But between a mavoi and a rechava, you don't need an eruv because nobody really uses it. Only in a chatzar they use it. And the reason why he said you can't carry between the mavoi is not because it's a mavoi mafulish, but because there's no eruv. Have a wonderful day.